I think for Trump it was working. However, he also made a kind of how they call, like, especially on the Joe Rogan, like leaving model. Like U.S. or China or Russia. Russians are far behind on this now. They are busy with their war. Board of directors or whoever has control on him didn't told him to stop it because you ruined the company. Because in Syria the situation is still not good enough to go back. In Russian-Ukraine conflict, posing Ukraine as our enemy and EU as our enemy. So the AI videos about flooding the social media about the war, like if you not vote for us, they will take you to this war against Russia. Yeah, and this country has a very big influence comparing its size, like the population, like 35, 40 million, I think. So it's the size of Spain, but much more influence, like I think in worldwide than Spain has. Like Spain has cultural influence, but Malaysia has more, like, I think, like financial influence.
Curiosity is the key to the imagination.
My girlfriend podcast, let's do this!
Dream the impossible dream. Welcome to Mike Helfman's Curiosity Podcast.
But before we go on, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Karl Feher. It's a Hungarian name. So I born in Hungary. I didn't born in Budapest, but I lived a lot in Budapest. And then I consider myself more like a European. I lived many countries in Europe, Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Germany, Spain, and I'm working working in Luxembourg for the European Commission as a consultant, as an IT consultant, as a Scrum Master basically now. IT project management. The EU has an IT department called Digit, so I'm working for them. I'm working for the Digit, and since 10 years now.
Okay. So when you were working for them, were you digitizing the government from taking it from analog into digital for the EU?
Yeah, so many projects we are running. I'm working on a search engine project. And so the EU generates a lot of documents, and they have to do every document in 27 languages to be available for every state. So these are basically copies in different languages, but it needs to be like searchable. And there are different classifications. We have an open search also, but there are some internal searches as well. So that's what we're working on now, and it's very interesting because the traditional search engine, the age of the traditional search engines are gone now. I think we can say that, like even Google or Yahoo, these kind of things we don't use anymore. So now we integrate AI also. But it's very challenging, very, very challenging, because all the big AI models are run by US companies, and the EU really fears to feed or train these models by our own document, So these chatbot functions are very limited because we don't give access to these models to classify documents, for example.
Right. Yeah, I know the U.S. has a couple of these kind of search engines that are internal for classified documents only, like SIPRNet, and I think there's JWAX, it's called, and these are primarily for military use.
Yeah, I heard about SIPRNet.
Yeah, and so you're kind of doing something like that. JWIX, I think it's called. Yeah, but you're right. Search engines are kind of dead, right? I mean, now you just pump all that stuff into an AI model, and it can tell you exactly what you're looking for in natural language. I did read recently that this is going to be a hit to the tech companies. What you just mentioned, the EU kind of moving away from American tech, right? France is investing now in their own web services to get away from like Amazon Web Services and their own cloud. They're building their own data centers.
Yeah.
Germany wants to build their own data centers. And this can prove a problem for American tech companies because Europe is their second largest profit center outside of the U.S.
Yeah, so there was also the State of the Union of in the European Union by von der Leyen, Ursula von der Leyen, and one of the main goal of the next years, she said, is the digital sovereignty of Europe. So it means like they want to get rid of several service providers mostly, like AWS, Oracle, or have a solution. They need to work out a solution for us which guarantees us the digital sovereignty. Microsoft also questionable in many points. So everything which feeds data into the cloud where we don't have control on, or the transparency is not guaranteed, and we don't know what they do with the data. That's becoming a little bit more sensitive now, I think.
Well, all three of those companies that you just mentioned, their stocks are all down since the ties between NATO or the EU and the United States have started to wither a bit, and probably because of exactly what you just said. Yeah, and Malaysia is doing the same thing, right? They want to digitize the nation for AI national sovereignty. I mean, they're positioning themselves as one of the biggest players in Southeast Asia in terms of data center infrastructure. And yeah, I mean, the Minister of Digital, Gobind Singh, has been tasked himself to digitize the entire government.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know the education sector is primed for digitization. The healthcare sector, there's a lot of people that are that are working on digitizing healthcare records in the country, and it's very important to, from a national security standpoint, I suppose, have your own systems in place rather than outsourcing.
Yeah. Well, this process is, I mean, the other big problem with this, or what I see what slows down this process a lot, is the regulations. I think that today regulations are just not capable to handle this kind of privacy, you know, where ends the privacy, how to control documents, who have control on documents and your data. I think the EU is highly over-regulated. It appeared first on like self-driving automotive, for example. I don't know if it will be allowed in Europe at all in the near future, you know. And yeah, so the problem is that the political bodies who makes the regulations are not prepared, and I think they doesn't really understand the issue is itself or the challenge itself. And I think they are slow and they're behind.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Europe hasn't really seen any unicorns come out of it recently. If anything is built there that has any type of any type of prospect, it immediately migrates to the U.S.
Yeah.
to New York or to San Francisco. I mean, hopefully they start putting some incentives in place so that companies can thrive in the EU. But bureaucracy is something that tends to form in socialist societies as well, and the EU is quite socialist. You know, from France to Germany, and those that type of government just, you know, it feeds bureaucracy, which feeds regulation, and the speed that AI is moving. I mean, even in the most lean governments, it's hard to keep up.
Oh, very hard, very hard. And it's very dangerous now, you know, when it's a strategic, it will be very, or if it's not strategic already, like who has the best model, you know, like US or China or Russia. Russians are far behind on this now, they are busy with their war. But, you know, like, and if they don't move, that we will be far behind again, like what happened with the EV, like the electric cars,
Right.
you know. We don't have manufacturing too much anymore also in Europe, so that's one of the problems. We had some inventive power, but because the regulations, these are slowed down, and the funds are coming so slowly to the startups, for example, you know, small and slow, and they're not really like going are brave enough to think big, like when there's a buzzword, for example, last time blockchain was this buzzword in the EU. All startups were like having a blockchain solution for something. They got founded immediately, and then the startup died slowly. They consumed the money, you know, and then if they were lucky, they were exited. But most of them just died. So I think they don't see they don't see really where to put their money on now.
Yeah, I mean, look, to be fair to the automotive industry, it's a very difficult industry to crack, right? And even in America, America is blessed to have Tesla, right? Tesla led the way in terms of EV adoption across the world. You know, I mean, they set the standard everywhere, including China. And unfortunately, Europe just didn't have an Elon Musk that they could compete with. They've got all these legacy car makers, you know, Volkswagen, Porsche, whatever, Mercedes-Benz, but they've fallen by the wayside the same way that Ford and Chevrolet in the United States have, because they've got all this old infrastructure. It's like an entirely new process to build these cars, and you know, it's just a change of economy, isn't it? I mean, like going from an old oil economy to this new smart technology economy, because these cars are more computers than they are cars from the 20th century.
Yeah.
They're more robots, if anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure this European car industry falling behind how much is caused by the technology, lack of technology, or is consumer driven. I was also thinking on that the consumers was not interested enough to have electric cars.
Well, but Norway has the highest uptake of electric vehicles in the entire world. Norway does.
Okay.
And the EU, they have been quick to, not quick, but first in terms of the West to adapt Chinese electric cars. I think
Yeah.
the Chinese cars are coming in now.
Yeah.
And they're going to take over because the price point is right, the quality is good. And in America, it's still, still Tesla kind of holds that monopoly. But they're losing a lot of ground in Southeast Asia and in China, particularly.
yeah.
I mean, here, you look outside in Malaysia, there are Chinese electric vehicles everywhere. And look, my family has one as well, right? I mean, they're an amazing value.
I was very surprised, to be honest, when Elon Musk got involved to politics, because that was my fear. I mean, not fear, but that was my assumption that he will lose the European market on this, because he lost the popularity very quick. However, in Europe, he was seen like like a revolutionary also. Many people idolized him, like how great entrepreneur is this, SpaceX and all kind of things, Tesla as well. But because of the political, taking the political side, I think so what I was surprised that the board of directors or whoever has control on him didn't told him to stop it because you ruined the company. I don't think he ruined the company necessarily, but the sales in Sweden, I heard, they lost like 45%, for example. I heard this, and I think one of the reasons, like Europe is turning to the Chinese electric cars now, is this.
That's interesting. And meanwhile, Musk is going to release Robotaxi this year, a car with no steering wheel. I mean, that's insane. Can you imagine that? He's got a car that has no steering wheel, no pedals. It's a pure electric autonomous vehicle, and apparently they're going to retail for $30,000 or something like that. I was talking to my friend about this today. This could be a great business opportunity, because cars you finance, right, at a relatively low interest rate. You could buy 10 of those cars for like $30,000 down. You finance the rest, and they're just driving 20 hours a day, 22 hours a day when they're not charging, delivering goods, picking up passengers. I mean, it could be an incredible business opportunity for people.
You
And
can
maybe
do
that's what
your
he's
own
banking on.
taxi company, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're your own taxi. You're your own Uber, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there was major backlash. Speaking of Uber, this guy, the CEO of Uber, I can't remember his name. Starts with Darian something. Let's look it up, please. Kashevsky or how do you say his name? CEO of Uber. You're so slow. You're never in it. You got to be in the conversation. I told you that instead of texting her or something. Huh?
Cross.
Yeah, it's a tough name. Dara Kosov something. Anyway, he's getting a lot of flack because he went on the Diary of a CEO podcast and said that he's going to cut 9.6 million jobs because he's going to buy all robo-taxis. And so all the drivers are basically gone. So there was a lot of hate in the comments because of that.
Actually, yeah. This is the transportation is still a queue. After COVID, I was surprised. During COVID, I thought like, finally, this is the time. There will be no traffic jams anymore because everybody worked from home. But eventually, all the companies who are renting the big office buildings wants to have this office building full again, and these office buildings in the downtown. So everybody is traveling to the downtown again. This is pretty bad. Like I mean.
It came back. It
Yeah,
came back.
it came
But you know
back.
what? Your hopes and dreams may not be dashed because they're saying a second wave of commercial real estate is going to be going down now because of AI. Because the companies literally aren't going to be able to fill those offices because they're just going to be computers instead of people. So what happened recently was this obscure karaoke company, a company that builds karaoke machines out of like Japan. They released their numbers that using AI, they were able to upscale their business and facilitate by like 800% without making any additional hires. When that news came out, all these commercial REITs started going down because they realized, wow, people are going to be making layoffs. They're not going to need much more commercial real estate. And the they're going to have to get converted most likely to homes, hopefully.
Uh-huh.
Affordable housing is what they should be converted to with a subsidy by the government.
That would be great, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't think about this. I was always thinking like, okay, I feel sorry for these investors, kind of that, but they have to find a new business model now. They don't own office buildings anymore, but move somewhere else, produce movies or something. Like
Yeah. The tough thing about converting office buildings to retail space, because I looked into this when COVID was happening, is the plumbing. The plumbing isn't set up for so many bathrooms on one level, right? It's set up for just like a centralized plumbing area where there's bathrooms for office workers to go, right? So my solution was, I didn't implement this, but my solution was to create affordable housing akin to tenements back in the early 20th century in New York and the 19th century, when you had a lot of immigrants coming over to the U.S. from Russia, Italy, Ireland, Jews from Europe, right? They basically lived in these like co-living habitats where it was a whole floor of apartments and then they all shared like 1 or 2 bathrooms and a kitchen. And that was kind of the setup. That was called a tenement, right? So I think what you can do with some of these office spaces, if plumbing becomes too expensive and prohibitive, is you create these like co-living spaces where the centralized plumbing works are utilized by everybody else who can live on the floor in either studios or 1-bedrooms or 2-bedroom apartments, you know?
Is it for like a
It's like low-cost housing. kind of.
low-cost housing? Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah, because I think the AAA stuff, that's going to be filled always, right? Like the most expensive commercial real estate, that's always going to be filled. It's going to be like the Bs and the Cs that are going to be in trouble.
Oh yeah, this
Yeah.
is a good idea because there is a huge housing problem everywhere I go. I see that. In Europe, also the housing prices are going up every year. Like like for example, Hungary. Now Budapest real estates are like that's the best investment. Like in a few years, you can double or triple your investment. I'm not sure now, but before. So young people cannot really afford buying like now.
Hungary, that Prime Minister's Viktor Orban,
Yeah,
right?
it's Viktor Orban.
So he's a big supporter of Trump, right?
He's a big supporter of Trump. Yeah,
and he's also a nationalist in a sense.
He's a nationalist in many ways. Yeah, his political career is very interesting because he started as a liberal Democrat, and then he basically moved all around the political spectrum. Then he noticed like he has to be a centrist, a populist centrist, and now he ends up, it seems like to me, on the far right. So now he's everywhere they talk about him like a far-right politicians, and there are a lot of far-rights in his ideology, but he's a populist in general, I believe. So if something else would be popular, he would go there.
But is he loved in the country, and is the country doing well?
It's hard to say. I think economically we're not doing well, that's for sure. Those are like exact numbers you can match up to other neighboring countries or countries with the similar possibilities, like coming from the same political era, like Czech Republic, for example, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia. Those are way ahead of us now because, there are many reasons, but I think one of his main goal was like keep the Hungarian capital in Hungarian hands, like make his own Hungarian business people who moves the economy, so the money doesn't go out to the U.S. or I don't know to West Europe or Germany or something like that. But we keep the GDP inside Hungary. But it seems like it's not like a meritocracy; it's more like a kleptocracy now. So the corruption is very high in Hungary. Corruption is a big problem.
But the real estate prices are going up.
Real estate prices going up because they invested a lot on renovation projects, like rebuilding the whole historical area of Budapest, for example. Budapest is in a nice place in Central Europe. It's logistically, it's pretty good. It's between like Poland and Germany, if you can say, or like Austria and Poland, or Austria and Russia now. Or from the north, like Czech Republic and to the Balkans.
Yeah.
So we are in a transit way somehow. And this was one of the benefits of Hungary was like during the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, when it was like mainly Hungary, Austria, and the Czech Republic together, the major powers in the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. And it was like a very, very strong and very influential political power of those days. And it was, for many reasons, a lot of Germans were coming for good opportunities, and they were investing in infrastructure. They were building factories. Brits also, and a lot of Jews from Russia, Ukraine, Poland also. So it was very like ethnically very diversified, and it was like a cultural, like a little bit like a New York kind of thing, and it moved the economy so much. We had a very strong
What
base.
years was that? What year was that?
Like the early 19th, I would say,
Okay.
end of the 19th century, start of the 20th century,
And
before
then-
the First World War.
And then World War One basically dissolved
yeah,
that, right?
and the bigger.
That was the end of
economic
monarchy,
crisis.
basically. End of World War One.
Yeah. But that was when the first metro, for example, the subway on the continent, beside England, it was in Budapest.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a very innovative. And we somehow, this Russian and Soviet influence during the Soviet era, which was not that long, like it was like 50 years, 60 years maximum, we lost this innovative power and this mentality.
Under communism.
Yeah, under communism. And I think the today political problems or the problems we have is still originated back then, because the generation leading the country now are socialized in the communism still. So for example, Viktor Orban was a high school and university student before the Iron Curtain fall. So I think this is what he saw. He learned, he studied, he's very interested about like foreign politics, and he wants to play in the foreign politics stage, I think. He's reading a lot, for example, philosophies, modern philosophy and modern politics, but I think because he's one of the leaders who doesn't handle technology. He doesn't use smartphone. He's not very know about internet and things like that. And I think the age of these political leaders are over now.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
cannot speed up.
I mean, that's probably, it's weird, right? Because it's a good thing in the sense that your mind isn't being dopamine driven by all these apps, but in the other sense, you need to know the power of this technology, and you need to know how it affects the greater population, and you can't really do that without experiencing it to some regard.
Yeah, and they are isolated from reality. That's what I see
Yeah.
the main problem. They don't really see what's happening in the country,
Right. Well, he's been in term for quite some time, hasn't he? How long has he been there?
Yeah, it's his fourth term now, and so 16 years, and he had an exceptional political power all through these years. They call it 2/3 or like 66% of the parliament is his party, so he can do basically anything. They can do any kind of law. And they used it a lot.
Well, I mean, it seems that he's part of this like small faction of nationalist European governments. I would say Hungary, Poland,
Slovakia now.
Slovakia, right? And they're not really seeing the influx of migrants the way that the rest of Europe is, because they've kind of closed their borders, right?
Yeah.
And they're driving them away, if anything. So that's kind of a split that you're seeing in Europe, because these open borders have started to change the cultural structure in a lot of these countries, and I think you're only going to see it change even more in the future. If there's assimilation, if there is not assimilation, if there's not assimilation, eventually there's going to be political power that gets taken. It's kind of like what's happening in Britain. You're starting to see a lot of Muslim influence in Britain because of the population strength of the Muslim community there. So there's I think 30-something mayors, and when that happens, then they can start enacting what policies they think are important to them in their community.
Yeah, and usually they are not very open as well, or liberal as well, I think. But why Hungary and Slovakia, for example, is not impacted of the immigration, there also another reason, like the economic powerhouse is Germany,
Right.
and maybe the social powerhouse, I would say, where the social benefits are the highest, is Sweden, for example.
Yeah.
So they move towards that direction on the first waves. Like we're talking about like 2014, the war in Syria. And when the mass of like millions of people were coming through Turkey and the Balkans, through Hungary and then West Europe, ended up in West Europe and Afghanistan. And that was like a huge wave. So the first wave was like several million people. And actually, it was Angela Merkel's period in Germany. And so there was a big debate in the society about like what to do with this lot of people in the borders, you know, because it was like a humanitarian catastrophe basically. They didn't have water, they didn't have toilet, they were waiting at the border, you know. They had kids and stuff.
Yeah.
Media, you know, found all these how to broadcast it, you know. It was like everybody was interested. So at the end, the decision was like, we don't do the normal process which
Right.
you have to go through during an immigration, like they do a background check, passport, whatever, and you have to wait maybe like which country was. In my time, when I was a kid, when someone wanted to leave the Eastern Bloc in Hungary, many people were emigrated to the United States, Canada, Australia. They had to go first into Austria. That was the first point. In Austria, they have to wait in a camp. They call it, in German, it's a Lager. So in a camp which was like an immigration camp, and these countries have like yearly quotas, right? Like how many people they
Right.
can accept a year. Plus they had preferences, like if you were like certified plumber or any technician or something, you had a better chance. But you had to be there. So I had friends who were staying like weeks, months in Austria. So now everybody just was like passing the border, and I think many people came which were not really, you know, running from the war, from Syria, but they were like seeing the opportunity to get a job in Germany, which is also understandable that they want to feed the family, you know, and make a career or something. But also some criminals too. That's how you have to. I don't say like many criminals. I don't know how many, but it's like a representation of the
Yeah, that's just a
population.
function of probability.
Yeah. So I think it causes a lot of frustration in West Europe now that after several years, they were running these programs of the migration programs, you know, like language courses and university possibilities to have a diploma or whatever, but it doesn't really work well. And Germans has I think they were a little bit pleased because in the 60s they have a very strong immigration. They called it like they called them not immigrants but Gastarbeiter. Gastarbeiter means like guest worker. So from Turkey, a lot of people were coming to Germany, and that was the deal that they worked there for 10 years. And after 10 years, they collected some money and they go back to Ankara or Istanbul. They run their own business there. But you know, so they were not really assimilating as well. Some were, but many of them not, because they know that they will go back. But these people are staying there now, these immigrants, because in Syria the situation is still not good enough to go back. So they are there, they're not assimilated, and it's a big problem.
Yeah, that is a problem. You know, you've got to assimilate to the society that I mean, as expats, right? I mean, this is, I've got my Chinese New Year shirt on for Chinese New Year. And I've also got my, my Baju Malayo as well for Hari Raya that I wear. And I love celebrating these holidays, you know, with my friends that are part of that's an important part of their culture. And
I bet you speak some Malay too, right?
yeah, Sikit Sikit. Sikit Sikit.
It's not a very difficult language to learn, to be honest.
I've taken many courses to learn Malay, but the
Really?
problem is living in KL is that not many people want to speak it with you. They want to speak English
Really?
for the most part. Yeah, so it's most helpful out in the kampong, you know, when you get outside the city and where Malay is more widely used.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, I can get around, you know, get my way around with Malay, and I understand it more than anything. Produced a couple of Malay films. You know, I had to read a few Malay scripts. But yeah, you know, and you see this happening in Europe, but sometimes there's even backlash, right? Like in France, which has an extremely large Muslim population, many from Algeria and Northern Africa. Then you start to see like the ban on burqas, and which is like some sort of a backlash to this cultural movement, which I don't quite understand, because I would think that would create more polarization rather than less, which is the whole point, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard task to have. You know, but I don't have to deal with it.
It's very, very interesting to see how the popular opinion on this shapes. So in 2014, I have many people who were like very strong opinion about like that they have to, we have to be very tolerant with all the immigrations, give them time, things like that, uh, collecting money or funds for them and things like that. And the same people who live in Sweden now they have much more different. Some has very different opinion. Some are would be much more cautious now this time.
Right.
Because in Sweden, it's also, I have a friend who lives in Sweden, it causes a lot of issues for them,
Oh, yeah?
Swedish society, yeah. And
Well, like rapes are up.
yeah,
Crime is up.
yeah, crime is
right?
up. These gang wars were not there at all in Sweden, it was a very quiet society. But now it's like there are some areas, in Stockholm now, which are like very dangerous, really.
Really?
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Like, oh my gosh, I saw I sound like a far right winger now, but the mainstream media, it wants to cool these all the time down. This is
Right.
my idea, that they don't wanna completely silence this, but they wants to like just cool the things off because they are very afraid to talk openly about these problems. But I don't think that you can keep it under the carpet for so long, because this is one of the reasons that the far right movements in Central Europe, mostly east part of Germany, and in Britain are getting stronger now, because the government, the ruling elite, doesn't have answer to these problems. So the wrong answer, as usually is coming from the far right.
Well, the UK has been the worst perpetrator of free speech in the entire world this year. I think last year they led the world with 13 or 14,000 arrests for things that people have said on social media. You say something on social media that goes against the grain, or that could humiliate someone, or that could offend someone, you can get arrested in the UK and go to jail. And in fact, the prisons were so packed in the UK that they were taking out violent criminals and putting in these social media slanderers into prison. I find that quite crazy. I mean, literally more people went to prison for social media posts in the UK than in Russia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I look it up. Yes, I think China's numbers are probably a bit hidden, but outside of China, I think the UK was number one. And this is supposed to be a free and open society. And now you see Elon Musk is he's lobbying hard. Talk about Elon Musk in politics. He's lobbying hard for Britain. I think he's backing some Take Britain Back party or movement, something like that.
Yeah, I know this guy's. I forgot his name. He was a football hooligan for a while, but he became a
Tommy
political.
Robinson,
Yeah,
is
Tommy
it?
Robinson.
Okay,
He's very
yeah.
popular,
Right.
and he's. But yeah,
1.8 million people in the United States were in jail or prison. Russia is about 500,000
What?
people. People in the U.S. 1.8 million people.
No. For social media posts.
Oh.
People in prison for social media
UK,
posts.
UK. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
you could see this during the the protests in Britain.
Yeah, there was a lot of protests.
Yeah.
12,000 in UK, 400 to 800 in Russia.
Yeah. What about the rest of the world? Yeah, but 12,000 people in the UK. Can you
That's a
imagine getting
lot.
arrested for a social media post
Uh-huh.
or a WhatsApp chat? I know it's happened here a couple of times, but very rarely. It's nowhere near UK numbers. Malaysia's numbers are probably in the hundreds, if less, probably less, probably in the double digits. Yeah, so it's it's scary to see that these democratic societies are like clamping down. And the UK is the most surveilled society in the world. One of the most. It's got the most CCTVs per square foot in London.
Yeah.
Yeah, London I think has the most CCTVs per capita or something like that.
They started it because of the high crime rate.
Well, the CCTV started a long time ago,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know why, what the inciting reason was, but I just know that now they have scaled it up to a point where there are people out there who, they're these like rebellious groups that when they see a CCTV going up in a new neighborhood, they cut it down immediately, and yeah.
UK is very, how I see, is very vulnerable. I think that society, from many, you have
How
the
many CCTV? What about the CCTV?
or the jail.
Where?
UK.
Searching everything else.
Don't worry.
5.2 million to over 6 million cameras in operation
In the UK,
in the UK.
that's a lot. 6 million cameras owned by the government.
600,000 for the government. The rest are purely just
Private
homeowners and
companies.
private
Uh-huh.
properties.
Okay.
Well, so I think so. So you saw when you remember Brexit, right?
Yes.
So that was, I think, the first big test of Russian. How do I call it? The
Okay, so outside of China,
Mhm.
let me do this guy's job real quick. Chongqing has 2 to 2.5 million cameras in it. Shenzhen has also a massive number of cameras. And then there's London with 600,000 plus cameras. It's the most surveilled Western city in the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right, sorry.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying during the Brexit.
Yeah, so I think these societies are very vulnerable. What I see also in Hungary, because the older generation have issues how to handle social media feeds, information, and disinformation campaigns work very well. I'm sure that there were like a Russian disinformation campaign on Brexit, so a lot of people voted for Brexit, which I regret now. But there's no way back. And so I see it also in Hungary. The Hungarian older population are exclusively on Facebook now, for example. And this is one of the first political campaign now when AI videos are so massively overtaking the political advertisements.
Yeah.
A lot of AI videos about their political opponents and other things. And the people just cannot justify it if it's AI or if it's real, and it's totally misleading them.
Yeah, I mean, the Brexit was facilitated by Nigel Farage and Cambridge Analytica, which then Trump used the same tactic to get elected in the United States in 2016, where they essentially gamed the social media algorithms and created these narratives and information campaigns to get people on board. And that just goes to show you how these social media algorithms just put people into these echo chambers and can create narratives. If you have the right amount of resources, anybody around the world can create a narrative now. That's the thing. Before, you had to own a newspaper, you had to own a television station, which a lot of them were also owned by government. And
Wag the Dog movie, remember that, right?
It
With
was-
Al Pacino.
Which one?
The Wag the Dog.
Wag the Dog, right? Robert De Niro. Yeah, Wag the Dog. It was, governments could do it. Maybe large corporations could do it. But now, if I could raise, $1 million, I can create a narrative. I can
Yeah.
have my own lobby,
Yeah.
right? I can create my own narrative that can go across X and Facebook and get people to vote or get people to, join my company or whatever. So there is more individualistic power in it. But it also, the algorithms give people what they want and what they feel they need, and it stems polarization because you're getting more of the same.
Yeah.
And now with this like creator economy, people are saying more and more outrageous shit, and they're not held accountable for it just to get likes and to get followers and to get engagement. So there's just more and more outrageous conspiracy theories and misinformation on the internet that creators are taking advantage of and people are believing. And that causes even deeper polarization.
Yeah. It's like a spiral kind of thing. And back to the EU answer to this is also regulation. So for example, now from 1st of February, if I remember well, you cannot use paid social media posts or paid on Facebook, for example, for political campaigns.
Right.
So now this is a question like, do we need to accept like social media can be like a campaign tool also to inform or disinform sometimes your people?
Oh, it is. It's a major campaign tool. I think the first person to crack that was Barack Obama. He cracked social media. Then Trump started gaming the algorithms. But then Trump found a whole new tool for political campaigning in this most recent election, which was podcasts. So rather than just doing political ads, he hit the podcast circuit, which no other politician had the balls to do because it's an open setting, right? And it's a pure conversation. Rogan hit Trump hit Joe Rogan. He was on Theo Von. He was on all these big podcasts that attract young men,
Yeah.
and he got a lot of votes for that.
Why Kamala Harris didn't go?
Didn't
right?
go, right? She didn't go on any of them, and because she couldn't, because she's a talking point person. You know, she reads what's on the teleprompter. She's not she doesn't have real feelings about these campaign issues. Whereas Trump apparently knows what he was talking about, even though sometimes he go off base and, you know, but he was actually, because fact is, if you have a podcast with somebody for an hour or 2 hours, you can expose that person for who they really are.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to slip up. The mask is going to fall
You
at some
can't
point.
control yourself for 3 hours.
Right. And that's what they feared for about Kamala Harris.
Yeah. But, you know, like, I think for Trump it was working. However, he also made a kind of, how they call, like, especially on the Joe Rogan, like leaving. He was trying to talk about other things, which is normal for a politician. But I think at the end, why Kamala Harris wasn't transparent in this way, I think people will give him more credit for this.
Yeah, and look, I think that the modern day social media companies, when we look back on history, are going to be looked at in a couple of ways. One, my hypothesis is that they were the precursors to the AI takeover, right? Because AI essentially created these algorithms that drew engagement to these platforms. So this is the precursor to AI taking over the human population, if we're going down the dooms route, right? Because it divided the population, it made us polarized, it made us lonely. Right, and now AI is starting to become more prevalent in almost everything that we do, and we're starting to see it take jobs. Okay, I think we're also going to look back at the social media companies and look at them almost like cigarette companies, because of these feedback loops and the algorithms that keep people engaged with more of what they want.
Oh, it's very addictive.
It releases the same amount of dopamine that slot machine gambling and cocaine release. So that was a Harvard study. So we're going to look back at these, and I think they're going to be looked at as the big tobacco companies, you know, years from now.
That's a good idea. I never heard this. Like they should, in the U.S., they don't want to regulate these, right? Because the financial power is so big. But they did it to the tobacco companies
after
too.
years and years and years. I mean, Big Tobacco knew that. They did studies, they funded science, they knew that it was causing cancer from the 1960s, I think, and they covered it up. It took 40 years.
40
So
years.
it may take a long time.
I don't know if we have 40 years.
Yeah.
To be honest, back to this a little bit like polarization. The narrative you said, yeah, anybody can create narrative now. For example, in the Hungarian political campaign now, there will be an election for Viktor Orban again in April, and he's losing now the popular votes. So the narrative is like what they say is like the key, like living or dying. You know, if you don't vote for him, you will die.
Right.
So he used the Russian war in this Russian-Ukraine conflict, posing Ukraine as our enemy. And EU as our enemy. So the AI video is about flooding the social media about the war. Like, if you not vote for us, they will take you to this war against Russia, because the EU prepares a war versus Russia. This is, I think, the dependence on the Russian energy and the influence of the Russian imperialistic or imperialism. I think this is what is have the biggest debate now in Europe about, like, what is the biggest danger on us. I think this is what we feel now, much more danger than China or US or anything else.
Well, Europe has been dependent on Russia for its energy needs for so long, and I think this whole sustainability and green agenda, which is essentially, I mean, look, I think it's good, right? I don't want to destroy the planet, but it has become a bit of like a cult and a religion in a sense, environmentalism and sustainability, to the point where for some reason Germany is shutting down and France are shutting down their nuclear facilities in exchange for their citizens having to have extra blankets in the wintertime.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
opened a lot of old coal mines, you know.
And they opened coal mines. Nuclear energy is the cleanest energy on the planet, and there's only been 3 documented disasters in nuclear history since like the 1950s, right? Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima. 2 of those were human error, and the third one was a natural disaster. So I don't really see what the issue is. It's the most efficient. It's the cleanest. I mean, and now that they're at odds with Russia, their citizens are suffering, right? I mean, I think they should be building more nuclear plants.
Yeah, I think it's partially became because of the Cold War. You know, in my childhood, this was the main topic. Also always like U.S. and Russian or Soviet Union nuclear potential. You know, who has how many rockets? And I think the nuclear power plants also became a part of this. Like this is an evil. Nuclear is evil because it brings death. You know, and I think. Some people say also that this green movement was influenced by the KGB somewhat, you know, always loosen a little bit of the society, you know, a little bit in West Europe, you know.
Well, it makes sense because they want you to buy their oil. So they're
Yeah,
going to tell you, no, you need this, which is less efficient, so that you can subsidize it with our oil coming in.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint, it makes sense. I mean, have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that interview with the ex-KGB agent Brezhnev when he defected to the United States in the 80s or 90s? He gave an interview that explained everything that is happening in the West right now. He said it's a slow game that Russia is playing.
Yeah.
They're going to embed in their universities, they're going to embed it with the teachers, and they're going to change your ideology. They're going to get you away from capitalism. They're going to get you more towards communism and more towards socialism, and then it's going to divide society. And that's exactly where the woke movement came from. It came out of universities. And now it's going even more and more left, and it's becoming more socialist, borderline communist in some of these super far left wing players. And he kind of predicted it in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, they try to push their influence in South America also, you know, and also in Malaysia, by the way, I guess. Or maybe not in Malaysia particularly, but in Southeast Asia, Vietnam.
Well, there was a Malay. No, there
China.
was what was it called? The Malaya. There was a communist threat in Malaysia back in the 40s or
Yeah.
50s. When was that? The Malayan emergency, I think.
Malayan emergency, yeah, 1948 to 1960.
The Malayan emergency. The communists. They actually had. So in Malaysia, there was something called the Malayan emergency from like 1940s to 1960s. The communists actually had like camps and setups in the jungles of like Ipoh and stuff. And I know that Robert Kwok, Malaysia's richest man, his brother died fighting the communists up there, or maybe he was a member of their party. I can't remember. It was one or the other, but he died fighting in that conflict. And and eventually the communists lost, and thankfully democracy won.
So that was a threat here. But I think for Malaysia, for me, when I first came here, I didn't see any sign of it, to be honest. 2014. So it's like one of the most capitalist society, I guess, in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, there's quite a few
Appropriate
prominent
capitalism.
Malaysian businessmen around the world too that people don't even know about, right? Like Robert Kwok, but then there's also the guy from Broadcom in the U.S. I think he's the CEO. He's like super wealthy. There's the guy from C, which is, I mean, they move outside of Malaysia, unfortunately, but there are some quite successful Malaysian executives.
Yeah, and this country has a very big influence comparing its size, like the population, like 35, 40 million, I think. So it's the size of Spain, but much more influence, like I think in worldwide than Spain has. Like Spain has cultural influence, but Malaysia has more like, I think, like financial influence.
Maybe, I think that's pretty bold. I mean, Spain doesn't have much of an economic impact anywhere, right?
Yeah,
But
but you know, the movie industry in Malaysia, like they were investing in Hollywood, basically movies and stuff like that.
yeah. The ex-prime minister's son from 1MDB, the Wolf of Wall Street, and then he got arrested for corruption.
Yeah.
But no, I want to talk about social media, right? Because we were talking about social media algorithms and news feeds, and Malaysia wanted to. Malaysia tabled banning social media for kids 16 and under, and there's been quite a lot of pushback on that, and I agree. I don't think it should be banned for kids 16 and under, but I think there should be a platform that kind of eases them in to life online, because, you know, traditional social media is not really good for young kids. It gives false expectations. It puts you in an echo chamber, algorithmic, feedback loop. Whereas there needs to be an alternative that's kind of like a responsible social media that you can get kids on before unleashing them into the world of these giant tech companies.
Maybe it should be part of the education also, like maybe not like like a full one class like every week, but like a few, like introducing you to social media, you know, what are the pros, cons, and what you have to be avoided and things like that.
I think look, that's around the world, right? I mean, the fact that public school systems anywhere in the world don't teach kids financial education. They don't teach them how to like pay your taxes. You know, they don't teach them how to manage money. They don't teach them now. I think how to manage your online life, like social media. These are things that should be incorporated into daily life. This wasn't relevant in the 20th century, right? It wasn't relevant in the 19th century, but it is relevant today.
Absolutely.
I mean, taxes were relevant and all that, but they didn't care about that. The modern public school system was based off of the industrial workers. They wanted to educate and train people how to become workers for the Industrial Revolution. That's why you have an authoritative figure standing in front of a class with rows of desks and seats in front of you, and you have that person is the manager, you're the employee. The manager is basically just regurgitating information from a textbook to the employees, which are the students. And this was all based on creating a better working class for the industrial age, right? I mean, hell, we're already 2 ages past that. You had the industrial age, then you had the information age, now we have the AI age. So we need to adapt this, and that's one of the things we talk about with bureaucracy being so slow and governments being so slow to regulate. But I do have to and to catch up and just adapt to current times, right? But that is one thing I have to say is good about Malaysia, particularly the Ministry of Digital, right, where they are now taking a real initiative into digitizing the country and, you know, creating national sovereign AI infrastructure, whereas, you know, other countries are falling behind. But there are other countries like, you know, I'm sure you've been to Dubai, right? They're way ahead of the curve. Singapore's ahead of the curve. The U.S. is finally starting to catch up now with Trump, you know, and they've got David Sachs in there, who's like the AI guru, who's trying to lead the charge in terms of AI. Have you seen, speaking of AI, they just allowed Elon's Grok XAI to have access to like the defense industry.
No.
It's going to be so basically they're going to plug in Grok to some of these defense contractors within the U.S. No, but to help like innovate on classified projects and to just to AIify the government essentially. And then now there's this rift with Anthropic because they said they don't want to be used for war, and there's a big pushback from the Secretary of Defense because AI is being looked at now as like a national defense project, at least in the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if I check this company, Palantir, I invested early on Palantir when I think 2-3 years ago when it was like $6-7 the price of it, unit price. Now it's close to 200, I think, somewhere. But so
Good for you.
yeah, I sold them all a long time ago. But you know, I knew that this is gonna happen because the AI at the end, you know, will be able to look through the battlefield, you know, and decide on strategic moves and things like that. And who has the better AI and who can get more information to feed to the AI can win the battle or can have a much better view on what's going on battlefield.
Right, and you don't even need to have a battle because you could just run these simulations between your AI and a version of their AI and find out who wins. And if it comes, you know, is it worth going to battle to lose this many lives?
Yeah.
Right. So that's like actually a benefit of it. You could run simulations of real battles and see if it's actually worth the cost of human lives versus, you know, whatever the campaign is.
Yeah. I'm sure they're doing that right at the moment also. Yeah, in Iran, regarding Iran as well. And probably it's a good, okay, the human factor is missing from this. Maybe they can simulate the human factor too, like an emotional or moral or ethical point of it, you know, because I'm afraid the AI doesn't really have that. It's like, it makes decision based on the outcome, right? The positive or negative outcome, I think.
Yeah, for the most part, they've done a lot of tests, right? Like the, what's it called? The trolley test, where the train has to decide whether to kill a baby or an old person. And they found cultural differences, right? Whereas in the West, we value early life. At least most of us do. Value early life. And in the East, in Asia, they value the wisdom of old age. So many people in Asia, in, you know, some societies would prefer to have the baby killed rather than the old person because of the respect for the old person and the wisdom that they carry. And many people in the West said, no, kill the old person. They've already lived their life. It's over. We've got new life right here. So you know, that's where training AI. I think it's interesting that Elon Musk, he says he just wants to train it on truth, which is facts, and to be curious, right? That's tough. I mean, then you're leaving all the nuances up to the AI. How does it determine, you know, those? How does it determine what's right and what's wrong?
Yeah. How much, if I can ask back, like how much do you rely in your private life or your personal life or even business decision on AI's suggestion, recommendation, whatever?
A lot. But the thing is, I don't use it. I don't ask it for the answer. I use it as a feedback tool.
Research.
Yeah, well, research, but also as a feedback tool. Like I'll tell it what I want done, and then I'll say, okay, expand on this, or is there anything that I missed? Because maybe there's something that I missed, right? But I feel that if you use it for all the answers, then you're just taking power away from your own brain, right? So and also you're making it be in charge, where I don't want it to be in charge. I want to be in charge, right? I want to use it as an employee. I don't want to be the employee.
Yeah.
Right, and I feel like that is what's going to happen to a lot of people. If they're not going to understand the difference of being in charge, and not being in charge, and AI is just going to feed them, and that's why there's some of these psychoses that happen, right, where AI just feeds into people's desires, and they start believing crazy shit because it just gives them constant positive feedback on their thoughts, right? And people have had psychotic breaks because of that. People have murdered people because of that. In fact, they're taking OpenAI to court in Canada because of this like school shooter, because they looked up its OpenAI records and it was suggesting that, you know, this was a good idea. Because and that's another thing. You can train your AI to be no bullshit. Like that's how I train my AI. I say, listen, I want answers, no bullshit. Okay, if I'm wrong, you tell me I'm wrong. If I'm not, you tell me I'm right. Right. So I think it's a matter of how you train your own AI, and that's kind of the cool thing about it, is that everybody can treat it in their own way. Now, the big thing is this year is the year of agents, AI agents, right? With OpenClaw and Manus, and I mean, there are agents running all over the internet now. So that's going to be the next thing. Who trains their agents better than the next person who trains their agents? And you're going to have agents battling each other in the background of the internet to fight over money to be made, or which clip is the most viral. I mean, it's hard to say this as a human, but like everything is going to be done by AI, unfortunately, at least on the internet. I mean, it's already happening.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the dead internet theory?
Oh, I heard, but I cannot recall.
So the dead internet theory is a theory that the majority of the content on the internet is produced by AI. And now
Read
it
by
is
AI.
found that is come to fruition, that the humans have lost majority of the internet. If we've lost majority of the internet, that's like a major battle that we've lost. I mean, I don't want to call it a battle, but if we're talking about control, we've lost control of the internet in a sense.
I started to feel like turn away from social media now, not because I'm interested about people's opinions, so I like to read people's comments and posts, but I don't like to read AI generated content. And I still can detect, and that's not interests me anymore. So I think maybe we also lose it as like we will turn away from it, and then it just AI will generate content for AI machine learning language models. You know, like
Well, that's what's happening
feeds it
now.
back.
You're right. That's what's happening now. AI models are getting trained on AI generated content, right? Like for example, Gemini is getting trained on Grokopedia, and Grokopedia is XAI's fully AI, take on Wikipedia, but it's fully AI generated. But frankly, it's quite good. It's way better than Wikipedia. Like Grokopedia yourself, and you're like, holy cow, this thing really knows. It got me like 95%.
I will check that, because the part of that, if it relies on AI generated content, and we still leave the hallucination on, or hallucination on a relatively higher level, then it can, generate like content like gibberish at the end, or a lot of false content. And that's also a fear, like you will not know what is real, what is not, if it's AI generated or not, and then if it's the real information, or this is generated by an AI and hallucinated somehow.
But I have to say the hallucinations they were a concern at the beginning, but now the hallucinations have decreased significantly.
Less and less.
There's very little hallucination now when it comes to AI. They've made big jumps in hallucination. from the earlier language models, because I started messing around with it in GPT-3, and from now up to 5.2, 5.3 even, it's really good.
That's a
really
good
big
news.
leagues. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about your product, the Convo, a little bit?
Yeah, we could talk about Convo.
Because Convo, sorry, because I was thinking, like, when I was recently working on software development, you know, every customer was asking me, okay, like, do you have AI? Where's the AI part of it? We are interested about only if there's AI in it.
Right. Yeah.
So how about you? It's the same?
Yeah,
You
we
do
have AI. You know, but we have AI. Our AI is going to be running in the background of the entire application. So, like, we have three major missions at Convo. One is to combat polarization, combat loneliness, and combat misinformation. So our AI is paramount in combating the misinformation, right? So we have our debate chambers, and AI is constantly running in the background of these debates, and we have an algorithm that determines who won the debate based on facts is a majority. Then, of course, you know, structure of the argument, rebuttals, persuasion, charisma, decorum is very important, because if somebody loses their emotional edge, if someone, you know, gets too emotional, then they'll lose points. And also within the newsfeed itself, the AI is running in the background and reading and seeing that if there's fake news or something that's AI generated, if we can pick it up, we're going to flag it.
That's great. So,
Yeah.
so it's good. You use it for fact checking, basically.
Yeah,
and things like
for the most part, it's going to be used for fact checking, but it's also going to be used to give wellness checks to our users on a weekly basis to tell them what their social media usage was, and broken down. So on a weekly basis, you'll be able to see what percentage of videos you watched that were political, what percent were sports, what percent were news, and then the AI can make recommendations to you. Would you like us to change up your algorithm? You know, so that way the user of our platform has the option to be able to see different content rather than just getting fed what's in our inherent algorithm.
That's very interesting, because that's one of the biggest problems of the today debates. I think that's the fact checking. You can't do debate and fact checking at the same time, and not everything is stored in your mind. So it's very easy to lose a debate if someone is good in these debating techniques and throw you a lot of, you know, fake news.
Yeah.
You cannot fact check, and you just at the end you lose the debate.
A great example of that is the debate that Joe Rogan hosted between Graham Hancock and the archaeologist. What's his name? Flint Dibble. Flint Dibble, he was spouting off fact, right? So fast. He was a really good debater, because that's primarily his job.
Yeah.
His job is to debate the current archaeological record. Whereas Graham Hancock is just a writer and a researcher who's trying to come up with these theories based on facts that are out in the wild. And after watching the debate, a lot of people thought that Graham Hancock really dropped the ball, and Flint Dibble won the debate. But only after fact checking did people come to find that Flint Dibble, he may have won the debate in terms of persuasion and charisma, but in terms of facts, he was lying his ass off. And then there was like this whole rebuttal that Graham Hancock actually won the debate because Flint Dibble was spewing off nothing factual. He just made it sound good. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's really important to have this live fact checking, you know, and people will be able to know right away as soon as the debate is done, you know, the percentage breakdown of facts, rebuttals. Yeah.
That's great. And also, like in the today's political debates, you know, like presidential debates, it would be great if it could be used for a television channel or something.
Yeah, and we're not going to be using just one AI, because we recognize that some AIs out there are being trained on biased information, right? For example, we know that OpenAI tends to lean left. We know that Grok tries to be as factual as possible, but it leans a little bit right. And then you have third-party, you know, open source AIs such as DeepSeek or Kimi or you know, Llama, for example. So we are having three AIs: one open source, one leaning left, one leaning right. And if there's a majority confirming that a fact is a fact, then we claim it as a fact.
Oh, okay.
So we try not to lean too far left, too far right. We want to be as factual as possible.
This looks like really, like, you know, like always when you do a startup, it starts like you believe in something which you believe it makes life better or people's life better, and this is something would really have would make life better.
Yeah, I hope so. I just hope that, you know, people don't enjoy their misery too much. You know, people, because a lot of time it's hard. It's hard to get people to change, right? Which is why I think it's important for a platform like this to be introduced to younger people, so that they can understand like what life will be like outside of our platform. You know, we want to try to educate them on social media responsibility. And then there's the loneliness, right, that we're trying to combat, and that is done by matching people who have similar interests.
Oh, that's great.
And you know, let's say you're a tech guy, but let's say you have a interest in fishing, right? But you don't really have any of your friends who are interested in fishing. You can come on our app and you can speak to somebody else who has an interest in fishing, and you guys can discuss, you know, different equipment, strategy, whatever it is that you want to use. And I think that'll be really valuable because, I mean, I've encountered multiple people who are having conversations at night with AI, right? They have, their friend is ChatGPT.
Really?
Yeah, people are lonely, man. And it's a real epidemic. And I think in a world where everything is AI generated, everything is AI slop, or just AI generated for that matter, there's going to be real value in human-to-human interaction. And if we can facilitate that on a platform, then what will happen eventually is there will become a conversation marketplace. And that marketplace is going to have all kinds of uses. There's going to be, you know, business coaching, mentoring, tutoring, therapy, just so many different suicide hotlines, right? There'll be so many different markets that are coming in. It'll become a conversation marketplace because let's say, you know, you're really great at speaking about European politics and somebody wants to learn about European politics, but there's 100 people that want to learn about it. They want to speak to you because you're this conversation influencer. You're going to be able to charge for your time because you can't speak to everybody at the same time, right? So you say, hey, you want to talk to me? Okay, that'll be, you know, $100 an hour, $500 an hour, whatever, however strong the demand is. Somebody like a Kylie Jenner would be able to charge probably $1 million, you know, for a half an hour of her time. I mean, people do it all the time, right? Like Warren Buffett would have this charity luncheon that he hosted. People would pay millions of dollars to go to lunch with Warren Buffett. So I don't see why people wouldn't pay. You know, if you're a billionaire or a multi-millionaire business guru, people will pay you a lot of money for half an hour of your time. And I think that's possible in this marketplace.
You know, I was in a very interesting, like it was a startup event in Japan, in Tokyo, and it was basically, they have the entity data had this social entrepreneurship award, which actually I won with my solution, and there was another guy from Portugal who won that. And he had the very same idea, like aging population in Japan, they're not talking to each other, so let's bring them together. And this idea was so popular, it got landed so well in Japan. It's really a thing, like it really, you know.
That could be a market that we hit. Yeah, I mean, the loneliness problem is really big in Japan and Korea because they have the lowest birth rates as well. I mean, their population is decreasing at an exponential rate. I mean, Japan now, you can go buy a house in Japan for free. You can get a house for free in Japan if you want to go live there. You can buy a house in Japan for $100.
I was surprised. I always thought like it's super expensive, you know, but at the end now I heard that actually it's cheaper than in many places in the world, for example, Spain.
Yeah. Yeah, you could literally get a house in Japan for free. I mean, there are 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom houses that you can buy for $10,000 US, $20,000 US. They're not in Tokyo. You know, they might be on the outskirts, an hour outside of the cities, but nonetheless, you're in Japan and it's a home.
Yeah, and they have great infrastructure for traveling and everything.
Yeah, and great food.
So you released the first test version?
Not yet. The beta is going to be released in March.
Okay.
In March, yeah. I'm having a Chinese New Year dinner with my team tonight, so hence the Chinese New Year get up.
Is it today?
Yeah.
Okay, good luck with that.
Yeah, so we're going to talk timeline and see where we're at.
Cool.
But no, we're on our way we want to release it to the Malaysian population. You know, I'd like to have some meetings with some of the, you know, the ministers here and see if we can't try and use Convo as one of these starter social media kits for younger people rather than them getting thrown to the wolves of X and Instagram and you know, see if we can do that and then spread it across the world.
Yeah,
That's
great.
the idea.
Good luck to you for that.
Thanks.
I hope you can bring it to Luxembourg, to be honest, also, at least to pitch this on some startup events. You doesn't have to be like a beginner of something, but you can get some funds there too.
Yeah, funding is going to be key because like something like this, you need to really be able to scale it. That's my biggest fear, right, is scaling it, is just having the adoption, getting people to adopt it because people are so intertwined now in their algorithms, and I mean, social media is such a powerful tool. These habits that they've created are so deeply entrenched within their neural pathways that it's hard to get them off onto something new.
Mm.
So, we're going to have to utilize some of those habits, right? Such as, just the flicking of the thumb. I mean, that is so ingrained. I don't know if you've ever caught yourself doing it, but you click on a video and then you just go like this to try and see the next one. And then, and it doesn't flip because you're on LinkedIn. They're very strong habits that have been built into the population, and we're going to have to utilize that. But at the same time, we want to provide the antidote. We want to provide the information, the knowledge to our users of what is actually happening behind the scenes, and if they want to change it.
It would be very important. I think also for politicians needs to see the benefit is because these polarized societies, what I see in this. Are getting very weak, very less resistant from other ideologies or other military power or anything. They polarize. They don't work together. And if they are, if they are able to debate and bring out solutions for problems, that would be great. It would make the nation or the country eventually stronger.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, right? Like, I think that our debate tool can be very powerful for political parties because political parties will be able to then identify who the young up-and-coming politicians are that can form a good argument, understand the platform, they're articulate, they know the issues at hand, and not only that, they win over a crowd because you'll be able to see what their following is based on their debates.
Yeah.
And hopefully that would allow party leaders to see who to create a better kind of politician, really, best of breed. And if we can have better politicians, then we can have a better government, and hopefully we can have a better society.
Yeah.
Across all boards, across every country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Is there anything else that you want to discuss? I mean, I know you have a bit of a deadline, and we're getting close to it.
Yeah. No, I have a meeting soon.
So just tell everybody where they can find you, and
Yeah. So for Hungarian content, go to the tilos.hu. It's a radio. It's an independent radio station in Hungary where I have two broadcasts. One broadcast is mine. The other I'm working for. And tilos.hu. And on YouTube, I have limited, but I have some English content as well. So on YouTube, just search for SZAMARPAD, Samarpad. That's the name of the podcast you can find. I'm happy if you just listen to the English one or the Hungarian one and join and subscribe. And thanks for this opportunity being here. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Thanks for coming on, Karl. So
Congratulations for it's a very nice setup here.
Yeah, thank you. We try. We try. We'll see.